Folks, another week. Excited. I know everybody was waiting for this. We got to congratulate DJ Cox on his new job, Register Wills, Kent County. He said he'd come back. He held up to that word but I know a lot of folks had a lot of questions about this Register Wills and what they do. Do I come there before I die? What happens to all of this stuff? And why is that department existing? Where they at? And so today we're going to clear up some of those questions.
Absolutely.
I'm going in and out, but forgive me. But we're going to clear up some of those questions that a lot of folks have out there about what's going on in the Register of Wills, what's changing. We know we got new leadership here. Is it going to be easier for us to start doing it? So, DJ, if you can just, give us a little background of where we're at with the Register of Wills and what's going on.
Absolutely. Johnny, I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me back. You were the first invite I had on a campaign trail to come to a podcast. And if you remember when we ended it, I said, yes, I want this to be the first one I come back to. And I'm happy to say it is. Then again, I'm also going to say that there's not a lot of people wants me, I guess. But thank you just the same. I swore in January. Mm-hmm. And I took some time, and that's why I didn't rush right back to you. You've always been on the top of the list to come back to because I enjoy doing this so much. But I didn't want to rush back. And the reason I didn't want to rush back is because I promised my staff one thing, and that was we weren't making any drastic changes right up front. I wanted to be able to get a lay of the land, meet the people that work there, and to understand the office the best I could as quickly as I could. And, now I'm in my 6th month, and there's a few things I can say without a doubt. One, the staff in my office is hands down the best staff in the county building. And I don't say that because they're my staff. I say that because of the training that they have, the training that they do, and the way they come to work every day to help the people. It's very clear. It's very clear that they do their job, and it's a passion of theirs. And they care, that they generally care about the people that's coming into the building, and it shows. So we're just now starting to do a few small changes, which I'm happy to announce. Kent County was the only county in the state where the registrar's office did not keep a copy of a will. You had to pass away, and your executor would bring us a copy of the will. We would read it and move forward with it, depending on what needed to be done. I'm happy to announce that within the next 30 days, hoping maybe a little bit sooner, we're going to have our policy up and running to where we're going to hold wills right in our office. And, I met with my staff, and some of them, everybody was on board with it, first off. Second, they were all like, well, how much are we going to charge to hold them? Because there are fees involved, believe it or not, for us to hold them. The safes that we had to get, the locking mechanisms, things like that were pretty costly. And, everybody's floating these numbers around, and I stopped. I said, wait a minute. The goal of our office is to help the people. That's what I was elected to do, and that's in the back of my mind all the time. So what we've done is I've asked Levy Court. They're our governing body. They technically set the fees. I went to them, and I asked them to set the fee at $10, one-time fee of $10. And I also asked that to be able to be waived at the registrar's request, meaning my request. And the reason I did that is they were like, well, why would you waive the fee? What would that be for? Well, what I'm hoping to do, we're working with different attorneys in the area, different legal experts to come in once, twice. I would like to get the program up to 4 times a year, once a quarter. We're going to start hopefully with once every other quarter to have attorneys come in to an open house, and anybody can come in, any Kent County resident come in and ask questions about wills and trusts, estates, and have the attorney help them write it. It'll be pro bono, and we're talking to attorneys now to do that. And during those times, it's my goal to have that program, that fee waived. That way, anybody that doesn't have a will, doesn't have any estate planning, which is the majority of people. My goal was really to lower that number, because people don't understand what is a will. What can I put in a will? Man, I don't own a house. I don't need a will. And that can't be further from the truth. It can't be. So I'm hoping that by having this program, having it up and running, being able a couple times a year to help people, just say, hey, look, we're going to waive the $10 today. Don't worry about it. Bring us your documents. Let us help you and let us help the people, your heirs in the future. And that's what we're always doing, So, like I said, 30 days is the goal. I'm hoping to have it a little bit sooner than that. And we're really looking forward to that, and I think we get it all the time. Hey, can I bring you my will? Where do I house my will? And right now we have to tell people that's up to you. That's up to you because, we can't give legal advice. None of us are attorneys, including myself. And so we're very careful with that. We make sure everybody understands that up front. We tell people all the time, if you have a legal question, you should consult an attorney. But that isn't always feasible. It's not always feasible. So my goal with these workshops or these open houses is to have people from all communities come in, sit down and speak with an expert, an attorney that does this for a living and ask those questions. Hey, how do I do this? How should it be worded? Things like that. So that's what I'm really looking forward to in the
future. Why did y'all decide to house the wills in-house?
So, one, it's cost. And Delaware law says that we can only accept the original document. So if you put it on a flash drive, that won't work. If, you make copies and hand one to each of your children, that won't work. So what constitutes a will that we look for is it the original? That's first and foremost. We got to have the original. Second, is it signed? It's got to be signed. It's got to be notarized. And it's got to have 2 witnesses. And once we check all those boxes off that, all those things have been met, then we go forward. We determine whether it needs to be probated or not probated. And, again, everything I say here, I'm not an attorney, so I can't give legal advice. So I hope no one takes this as legal advice. If you have other questions, please feel free. Email me, call us, stop in the office, look on our website. We have a lot of great information there. So with that being said, our number one goal is to help people. And most of the time it's when they're at their worst. They just lost a spouse, a parent, a loved one, whoever that is. So we deal with people's emotions. We deal with all the sometimes anger, sometimes it's even relief that they're not suffering anymore. So we deal with that on a daily basis, and we do the best we can with helping them. If it's something that's got to go through probate, generally it's if the person owned property solely in their name, meaning nobody else was on the deed. They had assets in excess of $30,000, again, solely in their name. So if you had a Mr. and a Mrs. on a checking account, and that's not solely in their name, and that would not apply towards that $30,000 limit.
So we got a question here.
Absolutely.
So if once I get my will made, can I just come and bring it over to the register of wills and y'all make copies of my ears? Is that how that works?
I'm sorry, you were breaking up on me. Can you try it one more time?
Oh,
are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, can you ask the question just one more time? I'm sorry, you were breaking up.
So when we, I'm sorry about that. Once we get our will made, we bring it to the register of will, and y'all hold it, and we get copies from y'all. Is that how it works?
So that's not current. We're not ready. We're just about to roll that out. Newcastle County has it. Sussex County has it. It's something that was one of the first things I initiated when I was elected, when I was sworn in January. As of today, the answer to that question is no. The person will have to hold that will. I'm hoping within the next 30 days that we will hold that will, yes. And then you would be able to tell your executor of the will, hey, just go to the county building, the register of wills, and it's there. wills in Delaware are not public information until the person is deceased, which means if you, Johnny, you bring us your will, we're not sharing that with anybody. That's not public knowledge. No one can get a copy of it. No one can see it. But as Delaware law says, once you pass away, it is public. At that point, it would turn into a public document.
If I lose a copy, can I come to y'all?
I think your question is if you lose a copy. As of right now, we don't house any of them. So you would have to supply us the original. So it has to be an original. Okay. We tell people all the time, it's very important to keep that document now until this program's up and running, in a safe place, safety deposit box, in a safe somewhere that, you know where it is and your executor will know where it is, because, we hear it all the time. People come in and say, Mom passed away. We know she had a will, but we can't find it. Well, if you can't find it, it's really hard to use it because you can't find it. So it's pretty important that right now, until we're able to house them and this program's up and running, that you keep your will and all your documents in a safe place. Again, we're hoping in about the next 30 days to be up and running to where then you'll be able to bring it in, be a one-time $10 fee. And when you pass, then, your executor or whoever can come right to us and get it.
Wow. Will y'all hold wills if I had mine made in another state?
Absolutely. So just because your will is not made here in Delaware by a Delaware attorney, or you wrote it while you lived in another state, it's as long as it meets those guidelines. Again, the original, notarized, 2 witnesses, and the signature of the person creating it. Yes. We will recognize the will that was created anywhere as long as those guidelines are met.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome for it. And how many, so where will that will be housed inside the county office once y'all started?
Yeah. Yes, it will be housed right in my office. As a matter of fact, we have, we're starting with 3 lock boxes, so to speak, like big, large filing cabinets that meet the criteria that they have to meet to house the documents. And they're there now. The locks are installed and everything's good to go on that end. It's just now waiting on levy court's approval for the fees, which I suspect will be done. Like I said, I'm saying 30 days. I actually think it'll be sooner than that, but I don't want someone to come in 2 weeks and say, hey, you said 2 weeks. So I'm expecting 30 days, hopefully by July 10th. That's the goal.
Yeah, for that would be perfect and stuff. And do y'all analyze those wills once y'all get them for when somebody dies after that?
Yes. So we review them and we do the best we can to help families, and that's what I was saying earlier about the staff. And you can tell they really care because they do try and help. Now, with that being said, we don't have a police department. We don't have, we're not saying, hey, Johnny, you're the executor. And in the will, it says you got to give the dining room table to your sister. We don't have the authority to go in and get the dining room table.
Right.
To help to bring people together. I mean, sometimes people come in and we sit down at the table, hey, Johnny, this is what it says. How can we work this out? We also go over probate. That's if it's got to go to Chancery Court. And I'm the only row office is what we're called, that has 2 deputies. I have a deputy, which I was just happy to appoint, Miss Valerie Rocha from Dover. She's doing a great job. We're happy to have her on our staff, and she's really taken off running. And we also have a deputy, Alicia Young. And Alicia Young was the deputy. The Court of Chancery promoted her to be the chief deputy. And what her role is she's a liaison to Chancery Court for my office to make sure we're doing things correctly and to make sure Chancery Court knows what's going on. And she makes sure that if people need Chancery Court, they have an avenue to get there. And she helps facilitate all that.
Wow. Are y'all going to do workshops so people can understand what the register of wills do? Or
yes. And that, again, is hopefully going to be done. Right now, we're hoping for twice a year. Once the program's up and running and we work all the bugs out, we're hoping to do it once a quarter. And that's when we're going to have, again, the attorneys come in, help folks out. We're going to explain things because it's
Can you hear me?
hard. I'm sorry.
Am I broken up? Oh my God.
You're there. I got you now.
I'm sorry, I lost you there again.
Okay. I said, yeah, we're hoping to do that once a quarter eventually when the program's fully up and running. Right now, we're going to settle to work the bugs out and make sure, we figured all out and it's done right. It's done right. And we're going to have that done hopefully by the end of summer.
Yeah, for it and stuff. Somebody asked, what is a small estate affidavit and how can I get one?
Okay, so remember I talked about probate, where if the person has assets of more than 30,000 solely in their name, property solely in their name, you would go through a probate. So a small affidavit is the opposite of that, so to speak. If you don't meet those criteria, meaning you don't have property solely in your name, you don't have assets 30,000 or greater, and you're not likely or in litigation, then you get a small state affidavit form. And what you do is you wait 30 days after the date of death of the person. You bring in your driver's license, the will if there is one, the certified death certificate. We got to have the original. It can't be a copy. You bring that into us. And what that form does is allows you to get into bank accounts, things of that nature. So that's predominantly what we see people want those for is bank accounts or, if there was a credit card outstanding, something like that is typically what they're used for. So just bring it in, but you have to wait 30 days after death for them to be able to go into effect.
Is this for somebody that don't have a will or?
It could be for somebody that does even have a will. I mean, something happens and, say your mom was the only one on a checking account. Well, the bank's not going to just let you into her account. So you need this form from my office, and we sign them over. And again, it's got to be 30 days after death. You take them to the bank or the credit union. They verify it, and then they give you access to the account.
Okay. What does the register? Did you hear my question?
No, I did not. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I said, what role do the register of wills play when somebody contests a will?
Again, myself, one of the deputies, we sit down and we try to help the best we can because we really want this. This is a hard time in somebody's life. That this is a hard thing that they're going through, and sometimes, as family, we all know we don't get along, and honestly. At the point that mom dies, grandma dies, grandpa, whoever, sometimes that makes that love-hate relationship a little more hate than love. We like to always say there's still some love there, but sometimes there's a little bit of love and a little bit more hate. And again, we bring them in, we try to get a resolution. And if we can't, then it goes to Chancery Court. And ultimately a court, the Chancery Court will decide.
Oh, wow.
But again, that don't happen very often. It don't happen very often. Majority of the time, we can work it out. The family members can, they get along long enough to figure it out. But unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way.
Wow. So does the register of will work with people that probably have passed and their house is left empty and vacant or?
Not really. So when someone passes, we notify the assessment office in the county that someone passed away, and now it should go, according to the will or to the family tree, however it goes, it should go to so and so. But that does not generate a new deed. And a lot of people think, well, mom passed, I'm the only surviving child, or I'm the only child, whatever. It's my house. I'm going to go talk to Johnny, and I'm going to get a mortgage on this house, or I'm going to do whatever. And we want them to be able to do that if that's what they want to do, but they have to get a new deed. They should get a new deed, and you should consult an attorney to draft a new deed, and the recorder of deeds office will be very happy to record that deed, and you can go on and you can write them a great mortgage.
Do the register of wills have attorneys that they recommend for?
So yes and no. Yes and no. We do. If you go to our website, just Kent County Register of Wills, it's the easiest way to get there. At the very bottom, it says documents, or documents and forms, I believe. If you look there, there is a packet of attorneys in Dover and the surrounding areas that does help people with wills, estates, that kind of thing. But we do not recommend one. Obviously, they don't work for us and we don't work for them. We just give you a general idea of attorneys that, you could use or contact, and you should call a couple. Find the one that works best for you, because just, like everything else, it should not be a one size fits all. This is the end of life planning. Everything you worked your entire life for is in this document, and it's determining where it's going and who's getting it. So it's very important that it's not done just off a whim. You should really stop, think about it, give it some consideration, and decide, where do you want your stuff to go? A lot of people don't realize, but a will doesn't always just have to transfer stuff.
Right.
Because a lot of people are like, well, I don't have a house, I don't have a car, I don't really have any money or whatever, I don't need a will. That's not true. That's not true. Because what about funeral services? What about, I want to be buried, I want to be cremated? What about, I want this person to speak at my funeral? I seen one the other day that said this person's not to be invited to my funeral. There's a lot of things that you don't think about. Do you want an obituary printed in the paper or online, how they do it now most of the time, or not? And all these things you don't think about, but somebody's going to have to deal with that. Someone's going to have to make those decisions. So, I tell people all the time, think about those things. Think about, okay, what about if I pass away? Who's going to get the pickup, or who's going to get whatever? It's not just about that. It's about helping people and giving them direction on how you want end of life to go.
No.
What do you want to have happen? Some people say, my mom, for example, says all the time, she does not want to be cremated. She wants to be buried. I mean, we've talked about that. I know that, but it's not in a legal document until she does the will. Now that she does the will, we know her wishes exactly. There is no doubt. There is no what about, or maybe she changed her mind. It's right here on paper, and we're going to record that for her in the office. And a lot of people don't realize that, that it does not have to be just to transfer stuff. It can be last wishes, which brings me to a medical directive. A lot of people don't think about them until, my God, God forbid you get cancer or something crazy happens. And now, do you want to be hooked up on a machine?
Oh, right.
At what point, we all say, pull the plug, right?
Right.
At what point, do you want that to have happen? At what point do you want to say, look, I fought a fight, I'm done.
You're done.
and those are sad things to talk about. Those are sad things to think about. And God knows we don't wish that on anybody. But the fact of the matter is, at some point, we're all going to pass away.
That's right.
We're all going to pass away. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They asked a question: do the funeral home have the right to come check the will once someone dies?
So once someone passes away in the state of Delaware, a will is a public document.
Oh, okay.
Now, prior to passing, Johnny, you and I, or you, whoever sits down, you write a will tonight that meets your criteria. You got the original copy. 2 witnesses have signed it. You've signed it. It's notarized. It is a will. That is not public knowledge. That's not a public document. And it won't be a public document even when, within 30 days, we start housing them in my office. You can't walk in and say, hey, my brother came in 2 weeks ago and you got his will here. I want to see what I'm getting. No, it don't work like that. It don't work like that. Okay. But now, again, once he passes away, anybody can come in, take a look at a will. We have a computer set up in our office where you can search wills if that's what you want to do. And I can't believe I forgot to say this, and I got to. So one of the things that I'm most proud about in the 6 months is when I first started, desks in the office were crammed on top of each other. you know, everybody was just so tight. We had a small office, and as the office has grown over the years, our space hasn't. And I asked one of the ladies that worked there, I said, if there's one thing we could change, what would you change? And she said, we need more space. We've outgrown it, and nobody has really listened. Well, you know, Johnny, you know me, and I decided that I would do the best I can. So I went to levy court, and I went to the county administrator and some other, you know, key people in the building. And I said, guys, we got to do something. They're on top of each other, and we got to see what we can do. And they said, yeah. You know, this is your first day. Go sit somewhere. And next thing I know, they come down and they say to me, how do you feel about moving to the second floor? And I looked around and I grinned, and I looked at the deputy at the time and I said, there's no other row offices on the second floor. And she said, no. I said, that means we're getting a penthouse. So I'm happy to announce we got a penthouse suite in the levy court building.
That's all right.
So
more space.
The space is bigger. My office was across the hallway. The chief deputy was across the hallway and down the hallway. Now we're all together. We have a meeting room that's private. You know, so when you come in to open or close an estate, you're in a private room. So you're not having to announce to the world, you know, what mom and dad left or you know, any private information. And so that was a big thing. And I kept telling them, guys, we got to make these conversations private because, you know, as you know, Johnny, you could just walk in the building. You can just walk in, ask a question. Hey, I need a form. I got a question. You know, hey, where's the tax office? You know, we used to get that a lot. Next door. You know, and so here you are telling the whole world essentially your business. And so we're now able to use my office. Use my office as a private conference room, and also the office they gave us. As you know, the county building has those bump outs, those big glass bump outs.
Right.
And our office actually has one of those bump outs, so we use that as well with a conference table, so we can actually now accommodate 2 people at a time. Wow. So, you know, they're just great at what they do over there. The staff is phenomenal. If you come in today to file your stuff to get an appointment, we're happy that we normally have people in and out in about a week, less than a week. We have you know, scheduled to come in for a meeting. I know Newcastle and Sussex, they are several weeks, you know, behind just because of some of the volume that they have. But we do the best we can to keep everybody in and you know, things on as fast as we can, because, you know, a lot of times this is the last step in the end of the death process. Right. And the last thing I want to do, or any of my staff want to do, is to slow that down. You know, we don't want that, because you've now lived through that. It's time to get it done, and we're going to help you do that the best we can. You know, now I'm not going to tell you always like the answer we give. Right. You know, I'm not going to say that. But what I am going to tell you is we're going to be honest. We're going to be upfront. Right. And we're going to do it right. We're going to do it right. You know, and
how many staff do y'all have there?
So right now I have 3 clerks. And I have my deputy, which I just appointed, Valerie, and the chief deputy, which is appointed by the Court of Chancery, Alicia. So there's the 5 of them plus me, so we're a total of 6.
Total of 6. That's for the whole county. Wow.
For the whole county, and we do it all. Now you know, a lot of times people call and say, "Hey, you know, I live in Dover, but mom and dad lived at the beach. I'm sorry, we can't help you. You got to go to the office in the county which the person who passed away lived." So, you know, we would love to be able to help you, but we can't.
So what happens? I live in my real property and stuff is in Kent. I moved to Sussex. I will have to come back to Kent to get that information.
Again, it's going to depend on where your residency is.
Okay.
You know, if you say on your death certificate, there's a line that says residency. That's what we go by.
Oh.
So if it says on there, you know, 123 Main Street, Dover, Delaware, Kent County. If it says 123 Main Street, Selbyville, you're going to have to go see our friend Greg Fuller. You know, if it says 123 Main Street, Newark, you're going to see our dear good friend Sierra Property in Newcastle.
Oh, so you go off the death certificate
Correct.
for it and stuff. The big question, though, DJ, is I know folks is waiting for this. How much does it cost? I don't have it. I got to open up my estate and all that.
So typically, and again, see, when you deal with the other row offices, the clerk of the peace, the recorder of deeds, they have a sheet of paper that they hold up and it tells you all the fees. Boom. Mm-hmm. We do in a way, but every estate is different. So typically, we don't charge a real estate tax in Delaware. Mm-hmm. So what we do is we tax at 1.75%. But that's not a straight across the board, meaning, you can deduct certain things. Like, so if there was a property involved, we don't touch the property. That, if you inherit a $3 million house, we're not taxing you at 1.75% of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at like financial stuff, values of cars, money in the bank, that kind of thing. And then you can deduct, costs. So the executor can take a fee to be the executor. We're not going to tax you on that fee. If you pay for a funeral, if there's $15,000 grandpa left behind and it costs $10,000 for a funeral, well, we're not going to charge you on the 10. It's going to be based on that 5. So again, the fees I can't say exactly what it's going to cost, but when you compare our fees to around the country, surrounding states, we have people all the time come from Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, and they're like, that's it? Yeah, that's it. And we always kid in the office about, you want us to charge you more? Because again, I think somebody the other day told me Pennsylvania, if you inherit a house in Pennsylvania, 9%.
Wow.
9%. Again, that's what I was told. And what that does is a lot of times is it makes people have to sell that property to pay the tax.
Right.
We don't do that here. We don't do that because I understand the Delaware legislature understands that that's how a lot of families keep generational wealth is through real estate. And if you got to sell it to pay, well, now the next generation don't have that estate or that property. So yeah, we do everything we can.
If I have a trust, DJ, do I still need to do the same probate?
So a trust are different. We don't deal with trusts. Okay. So everything to deal with a trust, you need to deal with an attorney directly.
Okay.
The short answer is no.
No,
we don't. The real answer is you got to seek an attorney for a trust.
Got you. So I don't have to come and see y'all.
Well, you still need to bring us a death certificate. You still need to let us know, right? But again, you're not going to go through the probate. Probably. Again, not everyone's the same. Not every situation's the same. Quite the contrary, everyone is different. So I don't want to use the words always, never. 100% of the time. Never. We never do it that way because I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression or the wrong idea. It's very important. If you have a question, give us a call. If we can help you, if we can answer the question, we're going to do that. Guarantee that. If we can't, if it's out of what we're allowed to give because it becomes legal advice or whatever, then we're going to get you hooked up to an avenue that you can at least explore to try to find out the answer to the question that you have. Again, we try and make it as easy as possible. Go to our website. There's a lot of great information there, including, like I said earlier, a list of attorneys that are in the area that do wills and trusts.
Another question you was talking about to pay that tax. If we don't have the money, if the family don't have the money to pay it, they have to sell that property, I guess, to pay it. Is that how that works?
Well, again, we don't tax real estate.
Okay.
So we don't mess with that. You're not going to have to sell the house to pay it because I'll be honest with you. Again, I don't have the exact number in front of me to tell you, it's exactly this. I would say you're looking at the closing estate average $100, $120. Again, average. We're not talking crazy high money. We're not talking about selling your firstborn or anything like that.
Wow. So and that's based on that. So that's good. So folks, if you have those wills in the States, when your loved ones pass away, it's a tough situation to deal with
Right.
anyway. But we prepare for it right there. And DJ, where are y'all located at in the
So
Levy building?
we are in the Levy Court building. As I said, we have the penthouse suite, like I like to call it. We're right upstairs to the right. Um, Again, if you have any questions, you want to come in, we have a security guard downstairs that can help you. We have it marked on the wall up the steps. Will's this way. Where we have a sign out front. We've made it as easy as possible to find us. Something else that we've started, and unfortunately, this hasn't taken off as fast as I'd like it to have liked it to have. I'm still working on it very diligently. We're going to do what we like to call community engagement more. Community engagement, meaning we're going to be out. I'm going to be out. The deputies are going to be out. We're going to be out talking to seniors' homes, the veterans' home, minor maturity centers. We're going to be talking, our first one we just did not long ago. I think you were there, Johnny, at the 55 Plus Expo, right at Dover Downs. Because, I see in the comments here, a lot of people are saying, hey, you got to have these conversations. Hey, I didn't know. And we get that a lot. People coming in, well, I didn't know that, or we didn't know this, or, we wrote a will at home, which is great. You can do that, but it wasn't notarized. Well, now it's not a will anymore. So if you know those things, now you're prepared. You're able to come in. It's a breeze. And when I told the staff, I said, hey, I really think we need to be out in the community more, so people understand. They can ask questions. Because, hey, you don't really think about it. You're driving to Target. You don't think, hey, let me stop in the registry wills office and ask if I have to have this notarized. People don't do that.
Right.
But if you see us at the senior center, or you see us at a public event, maybe it's some type of community festival day, or Old Dover Days, I don't know, something like that. And you're sitting there and you're thinking, hey, we haven't got our will done yet. We better ask some questions. And we're going to be there to answer those questions. And we've already seen a little bit of work that we've done in the community. People are already coming in saying, hey, I remember when I seen DJ here, when I seen so-and-so here, it helped us because, hey, look, we got our paperwork done and we got it ready. And that's what we're looking for. It's just so important to have these conversations and to tell somebody, Johnny, hey, look, man, I put you as the executor of my will, and make sure you're okay with doing it. Because people come in all the time and says, oh my God, mom put me as the executor. I live in California. My brother lives in Dover. He lives 2 miles from your office, but I live in California. So it's important to have those conversations. And I'll tell you what else is really, really important. A lot of people forget about. You need to review your will, your estate planning. We like to tell people once a year.
Wow.
Because things change.
Yeah.
You might leave. I had a guy, for example, call and said that I need your help. I said, well, what can I do for you? He said, in my dad's will, I get his 57 Chevy. Okay. He said, but the guy he sold it to won't give it back. Don't get it that it's sold, And obviously, that was an important item to him. It was his dad's. But the guy never updated his will, and that car was sold in the year 2002.
Wow.
So it's important to address these things. To say, okay, that car sold, or we sold this, or, or we bought this. Maybe you just bought a new car, you added a car to what you own. Well, now it doesn't say who gets that car. Maybe you opened a new bank account. Maybe, whatever. Maybe you changed your mind. Maybe you don't want to be buried anymore. Maybe you want to be cremated. All these things, for whatever reason, things change.
And what happens, DJ? I know y'all haven't started doing it yet, but like you're talking about, it changes, the will change. So I done turned it in, y'all storing it for me.
Yep.
It changed. I just have to come and bring you the updated one, or how?
Yes, absolutely. You come in and you say, hey, you know what? It's that time of year. I come in once a year to review it. I'd like to review it. And we say, have a seat. Here it is. And if you don't want to change anything, that's fine. We'll put it right back. If you say, oh, wait a minute, I need to change some things in here. no problem. Bring us the updated version, and we're going to file it for you. It's no problem. But, my wife and I, we review ours on our wedding anniversary every year. It's an easy date for us to remember. And we sit down and we pull it out and take a look at it, and we print off a new copy, because normally there's a couple little changes. We have children. Callie's 8, Spencer's 5. So, we need to think about, where do we want the kids to go if something happens to us?
Right.
And not only, and this is something we talk about every year. Okay, does my parents get them? Does her mom get them? And then we also got to consider, how old are they now?
Right. Okay.
How old are they? If you don't read this document, are they still in good health? Those are things you need to think about.
How far does those records go back with wills? Somebody's deceased. Do y'all keep them on file for?
We do. A matter of fact, as I said, we just moved. I just moved to my new office. I moved in last week. The rest of the staff was up and running a little bit sooner. We actually have Caesar Rodney's will. Of course, it's not the original. We have the original. We still have the original. It's in archives. But I have a copy of his will in my office.
Wow.
So they are public record. They're there. They're here to stay.
Wow.
Again,
yeah, wow.
We don't keep every will in our office because we'd have to have a whole building.
Right.
So they do get archived after a certain period of time, after they're closed, and that time has passed. But as of now, we still have them, and you can look them up right online. Come right in the office. We have a computer. You sit right there and do it.
Wow. To come look, and you can look up anybody that's a family member. It has to be. Yes.
Every will is public once the person passes.
Okay.
So you can look up any will. Something else that I've had the pleasure of working on is a new piece of legislation that actually passed the House today, unanimously passed the House. Myself, Ciro, my counterpart in Newcastle, and Greg Fuller, my counterpart in Sussex. The three of us did not support this bill. House Bill 147. It's a transfer of deed upon death bill. It's not that it's a terrible bill that can't ever be used. There's too many open back doors to the bill that we feel. And I look forward to working with the Senate, the state Senate, close some of those doors through amendments. I hope that they take some of our advice, sit down and listen to us. We met with the leadership in the House, and they took a lot of our thoughts. They did. And they implemented some of them. They didn't go as far as we would like them to have went. And we're hoping that some of the Senate will listen to us and add a few more and protect some people from it. I don't want to really get too much into the bill because, again, it's still going to the Senate, just passed the House today. Everyone's welcome to look it up. I mean, it's House Bill 147. But, so this office keeps us busy. It keeps us hopping. It keeps us moving, definitely keeps me out with the community, which I absolutely love. Because every day I get to meet somebody and they tell me how I didn't realize that. I didn't know that. Thanks for sharing. And I think what it's doing is it's helping protect generational wealth. Yes, absolutely. Because I don't want to work my whole life. And Johnny, I'm sure you're in the same boat. Absolutely. I'm sure most of the viewers and people listening here tonight are in this boat. We don't want to work our whole life and not have a say where our stuff goes.
Right.
My wife's a teacher, Johnny, you know this. And my daughter, 8 years old, came home 10 weeks ago and says, Daddy, my teacher asked if you'd come to school with me one day. And I said, absolutely, honey, I'd love to. I'm thinking it's for lunch. I pull out the paper, it's for career day. And I was like, this is cool. I'm always talking with people. I'm always talking with people about wills and estates, and this is going to be great. And my wife said, you think you want to go to career day? I said, absolutely. How cool. I always I won't get to talk to kids. I mean, how cool is it? And Callie was excited. I'm going to career day, and I get there, and they hand me the paper, and I'm talking to 6 classes. Most of them were kindergarten classes. And it didn't hit me yet to how hard is this going to be to explain what the register of wills does to kindergarten. And so, all the little kids, they come in, they sit down, the teachers are happy, everyone's happy. And it dawned on me right when I went to speak, they're in kindergarten. And it was the most challenging talk I've ever given. But you know what? I can tell you this, it was the most fun.
Mm-hmm.
It was the most fun because, although I don't know how many of them really understood.
Good.
Um,
They got the message.
Well, just sometimes being away from the mom passed away,
Mm-hmm.
to seeing their bright faces. And what I can tell you after the first class, every class I talked to, I started with, "Are we ready for summer break?" And I can tell you 100% of them was.
They were ready to go.
They were ready.
Another question, how does being a felon affect my ability to be a personal representative?
So that's a great question. I actually dealt with this not long ago. So depending on the felony charge, whether you can be an executor or not. Again, can't always say always, can't always say never. Some felony charges do exclude you, some do not. And the other thing we look at, if the will was wrote in, say, 2023, and your conviction was in 1998,
Mm-hmm.
we have to give that some consideration that the person that appointed you to be the executor knew you were a felon.
Mm-hmm.
We got to give that some consideration. Again, if you were stealing from the elderly, it's probably a charge that we're not going to let you be an executor to.
Right.
But maybe if it was, maybe if it was something like a DUI,
Right.
Although we don't condone DUIs, that might be a charge that you can still be an executor. So again, we deal with them on a case-by-case basis. And ultimately, if the decision you get from our office is a decision you don't like, you don't want your sister to do it or whatever, you have the right to go to Chancery Court and have a hearing where, again, Chancery Court will decide, yes, we're going to stick with the decision that we made in our office, or no, we're going to reverse it, and they can or they can't. It could go either way. It could go either way with them. Same thing in our office.
Yeah. Can I transfer my executor or executrix to another person after someone dies? So if I'm named as the executor of my mom's estate, can I tell DJ's my brother, I want DJ to be the executor?
Absolutely. And we see that because remember when I said earlier, you pick an executor that lives in California, but the baby brother lives right here in Dover.
Right.
So we do see that. We see that we have a form. You both sign a form, saying, hey, I want to be the executor. Hey, I don't want to be the executor. And we absolutely can do that. That's not a big deal. Again, we try to do everything the best we can to the will. Mm-hmm. But sometimes, things get changed. Some things, because again, maybe you wrote your will in 1998, 1988.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that person isn't alive anymore that you named as the executor. We see that sometimes. So there are ways that we can do that. Yes.
If I'm late paying my accounting, am I fined for that? Do I get a fine?
There are fines set. We don't necessarily assess the fine the day that they're due. Meaning, if you got to have it here on June 10th, when I left the office today, I didn't say, okay, how many people are late today? Assess the fine.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, they are assessed, but we try, Johnny, we really try not to nickel and dime people.
Right.
That's not what we're here for. We're not, we're not collecting taxes. We're not doing all that. So the best thing I can say is try to get it done on time. If you need more time, Amy does Amy's the clerk that does the accounting. Give her a call and just say, hey, look, this is what's going on. I'm waiting on this document, or I'm waiting on this. I'm doing that. And I can promise you she will be more than happy to help you and to guide you through it.
I got another one on the felon. Then we're going to get Gary's question here.
Sure.
It said, how would that be determined? Does your office do a background check to see if I'm a felon?
No, you have to sign an affidavit when you open the estate that says you're not a felon. Again, Johnny, as I said earlier, we don't have a police department. We don't have investigators. Now, what I can tell you, if you sign that form that says you're not a felon, and we find out you are a felon, then we're going to have to look at that to determine if you lied. Should we allow you to be the executor? So again, when the decision's being made, whether you should or you shouldn't, it's all character, right? It's all honesty. And if you lied up front, that's something we're going to have to give a lot of weight to. And again, just the other day we saw this. The person came right out and said, I am a convicted felon. I decided ultimately that she should be able to be the executor because the felony was more than 10 years old. It was for a DUI, and the will was written after her conviction. Meaning that the person that wrote the will, her father in this case, understood that she was a felon. And that was his wish to keep her as the executor. So therefore, we decided, yes, I allow that to go on. Now, whether the other family members will go to Chancery Court to have a hearing to remove her, that I can't tell you. That's obviously up to them. But it is their right to do that.
Right. And Gary's question is, complex estate blended family, the husband and wife who had a house together with the wife having 3 children from a previous relationship and the husband having 2 children from a previous marriage. The husband passed away and the wife still alive. Does the husband's 2 kids still heirs to the husband part of the estate? Does the husband's 2 kids still are they still heirs to his estate since he's deceased?
So this is how, again, this is in Pennsylvania. It says, I cannot speak for how Pennsylvania works. I don't know. I'm the registrar here.
Okay.
So one, we'd have to look at the will. Is there a will? Because the will may say, first off, the spouse is staying. She's going to keep the house. We're not kicking the spouse out, so to speak, right? So after she passes, we're going to look and say, okay, was the house just his? If it was just his, what does his will say? It says no will. It's going to get sticky. It's going to get very complicated, as you just said. Again, and now we're going to look, does she have a will when she passes? Because she may have a will. Does she even keep the house? Maybe, we see this sometimes. They raise their family. It's a 3,500 square foot house, nice big house, beautiful home. And one of them passes away and the other one sells the property because, they need to live in an apartment or something like that. It's in both their names. So they equally own half. I would say, judging by this information that you've given me, just by this, it would be divided between everybody, all the children. Again, can't say always, can't say never, because you don't know. And we would have to, again, go forward and investigate a little bit more in talking with the executor. But it's probably going to be split between everybody.
Wow. So take it, DJ, when you and you mentioned something, say that the wife wasn't on the property, do they have to sell the house or?
No, we will. Again, it will go directly to her. We're going to let assessment know, Mr. Smith passed away. It's now Mrs. Smith. Again, we're not creating a new deed.
Okay.
And that's something that so many people don't understand. They forget that whatever. And I know it's a hard time. I know it's a challenging time. And people don't do this all the time, right? You're not in our office. Thank God for that. Not in our office all the time. So again, we're going to tell you, you should create a new deed. We always recommend that. That's always your safest bet. Again, you got to go see an attorney. They're going to help you do that. Then the recorder's office is going to record that new deed. But it will say when you look it up, so-and-so heir inherited that property.
And then I think Gary had another question up there that the
nursing home
still wants to sell.
That happens a lot because they want to get paid. And that's the only way to pay for the nursing home, and that's what they're going to want to do. Excuse me. Again, you're going to have to consult an attorney is your best bet, partly because it's in the state of Pennsylvania, and we're going to start to get into giving legal advice at this point.
Right. What's the difference between the co-executor and a co-administrator? Is there?
Not really. They're pretty much about the same. Again, we'd have to read the will to determine if it outlines something different, right? because it might say an administrator is to do this, the executor is to do that. It's able to divide up. Again, every will can be different. Every will is different. So we'd have to look at that will specifically.
Yeah, and folks, as DJ said, we need to do some community events. These are huge questions that we can get together. Probably have some hamburgers, hot dogs, or something. And I'm going to talk to some of my councilmen in Smyrna, to just say, hey, can we set up something where we can bring them out, get these families out, some hot dogs, hamburgers, some sodas, and just have some conversations.
Right.
Because it's so important for us to be able to understand and not go in there angry, because the register of wills don't do nothing. It's just the guidelines
Right.
for it and everything, and set that up. But as you see DJ's email going across the bottom of the screen, send them an email. See if y'all having some things in your neighborhood in Kent County, and you want to invite him to say, hey, DJ, we just want to have probably an hour of this time at this event where you can just talk about the register of wills and how we can incorporate something. They'll be glad to do it. Or give them a call, leave a message, 302-744-2329. Please don't blow up the phone. But, let's be respectful of that. But it's good to have these conversations now than later, and we don't understand what's going on.
Well, that's the problem with later, right? In the Register of Wills office, later doesn't exist.
Right.
You got to do it now. And I know, some people don't like having these conversations. Some people don't. We're like, no, if I don't plan, then it's not going to happen. It is going to happen.
Right.
It's going to happen to all of us. And the last thing you want is, and I've seen it firsthand, Johnny. My father-in-law passed away from COVID. Unexpected, healthy guy. He was practically my best friend. But there was nothing to go by. My wife and her sister, my sister-in-law, didn't have an outline. Didn't have, information where his banking account numbers or all his bills and his paycheck were direct deposit. They came out automatically. We didn't even know if there was money in the account to pay the mortgage. Because until that 30 days passed, they can't get that short affidavit form. And then the bank has to verify it. So, it's so much easier, in our will, I could tell you, we list our account, bank account, routing number, account number, any 401ks that you may have, any stocks, bonds that you have, all those things, because it's not like, Johnny, you don't come over for dinner and tell your friends, oh, by the way, I opened a new bank account today. Right. And we kid about it, we laugh about it, but the fact of the matter is, this is important, and when the time to talk about it is now, because you're not going to be here to tell them afterwards. So we encourage people to have those conversations, sit down, grill a hamburger, grill a hot dog, crack a can of soda open, and have these conversations, and we're here to help with that. So again, if you have a HOA meeting or any group or organization you think it would be beneficial, I'd be more than happy to come out, talk to you, answer some questions, and just see if we can't get at least the thought started.
Yeah, and go. We have one more question for you, DJ. In Delaware, can a beneficiary of the will be a witness as well?
Absolutely, they can. Again, I say this over and over because it's so important. The original document, a notary that's signed the 3 signatures, the person making the will, 2 witnesses. But yes, the person that's the witness can be a beneficiary. They both can be a beneficiary. Maybe mom gives 50% to son A, 50% to son B. Both of those sons can be the witness, and it's still valid. Yes.
Wow. Yes. Folks, you heard the best. We have a lot of questions out here and information. So I'm just encouraging anybody, send the email out, give a phone call, set this up, little meetings, as he said, HOA, little block parties probably happening in the summer and stuff. I mean, so we can, be able to just talk about this stuff and be open about it, because everybody's have to go through this experience. But the best way to do it is be prepared. Everybody knows everybody's wishes, and go from there. DJ, I cannot be more grateful than to have you here and get you back, because so many folks was asking me, oh man, so today we're gonna ask a lot. I like, we got an hour. I said, but we're gonna have another time where we're gonna have to deal with this. But I'm recommending those folks in Kent County, if you having some events, American Legion, any hall or some church or something, call the office. I mean, ask them how can they accommodate, and go from there. And DJ, you have any closing words for us here?
I do. I just want to thank you, Johnny. I want to thank everyone that's tuned in, because my job becomes so much easier when I'm able to speak directly to the public, directly to the community. And this job, this 6 months that I've been here, has truly been an honor to be here. A lot of people say, well, it's a lot of work and you get phone calls all the time. I do. Mm-hmm. But let me tell you, they're good calls most of the time.
Right. All right.
Because I feel like I'm doing something in the community. When I ran, Johnny, you remember I told you why I ran. I ran because I came home and my wife kept telling me, look, you're not going to talk about this anymore unless you're willing to do something about it. And I said, well, I'm willing to do something about it. Now you got to listen to me complain.
Right.
And, no matter what's going on in our state legislature, over in D.C., or around the world, I can't change those things. But if I can help a few people in the Will's office, that's what I'm here to do. Please, as Johnny said, reach out. I don't care if it's 3 people that want to hear me or need to hear me. I don't care if it's 300 people. If it fits in the schedule, we'll work it out. We'll get there. We'll make it happen. And we'll have these conversations. And,
right.
Sometimes it's easier when it's not a family member leading it.
Right.
So I can't thank you enough for being here. I've had a blast. I hope you have too. And I hope the people have got good information that helps them.
Right. And pass it along, folks. Another week, another great information session. We're gonna pass this along. DJ's gonna be out in the community. He's gonna be telling everybody, because we're gonna pass the word to let them know that get your life in order, get your priorities in order, and make sure that you don't put that headache on your family when you leave. This is Creative Financing with JB. Another week. Thank y'all for attending. We will see you again next week. And we're thanking DJ. Don't forget to call him and reach out. Y'all have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks.